of the party as well. And to be sure, the 110-page policy document that he released with the Biden-Sanders task force earlier this summer, that was not a moderate document. So what evidence do you have that he would actually govern as a moderate?
Well, first of all, look, I mean, I have two things I would say if I was advising on an administration. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. You got this thing called an election beforehand. We still believe in democracy. But one is there's no new Green Deal. There's no Medicare for all. Probably the single two topics that were discussed the most. That's not even in the platform. Joe Biden has been very specific about the direction he wants to take. And if, from a political strategy, developing a policy both that solves the problems, number one, but then builds the cohesion of that coalition. I would have progressive ends with moderate means. And I think that's a way you make sure that you keep this coalition from ever tipping too far either way. And to date, let me just take the measure. He's done a very good job of keeping the progressive wing and a more moderate wing in the same tent without becoming an easy target for Donald Trump and the Republicans. Remember, part of the Republicans was not only appeal to soft Republicans or anti-Trump Republicans, it was also to give Joe Biden what I call his inoculation shots, because and I know next week the Trump campaign is going to put out this secret photo of Joe Biden in his camouflage outfit with Fidel Castro and Che Guevara and say he's this big lefty. And so this, John Kasich and Colin Powell don't exactly endorse and support big P progressive policies in this political environment to grow. Now, I go back to my time in 1992. Bill Clinton went into the convention in third place, emerged on top, and never gave up that lead all the way through November. Joe Biden's at 8 to 9 points, as I said, or 8 to 10 points up. It's hard to see him even moving incrementally. To me, it's looking underneath it to see did he move things internally that would tell you good fortunes coming in October and November.
But you believe that there's actually an opportunity for Vice President Biden to reach across the aisle and to pull some of these never-Trumpers into the Democratic Party permanently. You wrote earlier this week in the Wall Street Journal, we don't want these voters simply to rent the Democratic Party to remove Mr. Trump from the Oval Office. We want them to buy into our agenda so that they fuel legislative victories through the next decade on our core issues. How possible do you think that actually is, given that the majority of voters in either party say that their main motivation for voting this year is to vote against the other guy?
That's not entirely true. That's not true. When you look at the polls, all of them, pick pretty much any poll, it says, one, the overwhelming majority of people who are voting for Joe Biden are doing so to get rid of Trump. Two, the people that are voting for Trump, overwhelmingly, to the tune of like 70%, are voting for Trump. There's no ambiguity in this. The Republicans that they ask are overwhelmingly say, yeah, this is our guy. This is the guy we want. We have no issue with this. This is the guy that we want, Trump. Now, there's a section of the Republican Party that says, okay, yeah, we're dicey with that. And so these are the people that Rahm and Emanuel are reaching out to. What's important here, though, is he's not reaching out to him for a one-time deal. He's reaching out to him to stay. And he's making the point to saying, look, we're not really doing any kind of really big progressive stuff. And Joe Biden, at this point, is running mano a mano. By the time you get to the election, nobody's going to remember anything that he said in the primaries. And so, yeah, our policy agenda is basically going to be one that is in line with centrist policy, at least centrist from the standpoint of what they call, from the standpoint of oligarchs. But what does that mean for lefties? That means they don't care about you. You're irrelevant. This is kind of the point that I'm making to you. Your irrelevance, though, is incentivized based on your own actions and not having courage to stand up for America and saying, this is what we want, and putting, for the first time, and honestly, what is goddamn necessary, to put them on notice. Otherwise, you are going to gain a certain degree of that much more irrelevance if this works. It didn't work in 2016. The question is, does it work in 2020 with everything that's availing the nation? And if it does work, your irrelevance is ensured. And not just that, a policy agenda that is to the right is ensured because he's getting those people in order to bolster the Democrats' ability to do that. I hope you understand what I mean by this. You scare them enough where they decided, the brain trust, to take action. Rahm Emanuel is telling you exactly what they were doing. I've been telling you what they were doing. We're trotting out a bunch of Republicans on stage to blunt any idea of us being lefties. And yeah, Joe Biden is going with an agenda that doesn't include the lefty policy agenda. And then he made some note about progressive ends with moderate whatever. Something that meant nothing. They don't want you. The fact that you almost beat them, and they did beat them on policy agenda, doesn't matter. They're looking at it as America has nowhere else to go at this point, and that Sanders will sheepdog in the party, that lefties will continue to use the same politics at least for one more time. So if they can get these numbers and they can prove that, yeah, we can get Republicans to back us, oh, you're done. You're done. And you're done in a way that are like workers waiting for too long to actually take action and find themselves that, oh man, if I did this 20 years ago, this would have worked. But now they can get a robot to automate my thing. It's not a robot. It's more so they're getting Republicans to back an agenda that they themselves are that much more comfortable backing anyway. And it's not one that you're going to like. You incentivize them doing exactly this by continuously backing them over the last 40 years. And now that you're getting a little rowdy, they'll say it's time for you to go. From the standpoint of Joe Biden has also told you this. When he is in the room telling those guys nothing is going to fundamentally change, telling oligarchs. Or in the Wall Street Journal, where one of his campaign surrogates basically made the point that says, yeah, we're going to have austerity. Or Rahm Emanuel telling you right here that this is going to be the year of the Biden Republican. You can hear him for yourself. Let's let him play it.
Yeah, well, I think, look, I wrote in that piece also that 1980 was the touchstone for an election. That was the year of the Reagan Democrat. This will be the year of the Biden Republicans. You can see the Biden campaign with John Kasich, Cindy.
Basically, you can see the Republicans that he's trotting out to give you an idea on what he's thinking and where he's going. I'll end this here. Like, share, and subscribe. Lefties, this is your time, and this might be your last time. I understand the networks like TYT and the Cedar and all of these guys are telling you to kneel your bow down and just vote for the guy. That hasn't worked for the last 40 years. And it's not so much that these guys are wrong, they're cowards. And it's sad in a way because what America needs right now is for somebody to stand up for their interests. And you get this milquetoast run from Democrats without any aspect of the political space screaming that this is unconscionable, this is unacceptable. And instead, lefties bow their heads. Same thing. It is an utter betrayal of what's taking place right now from the standpoint of what is in any way considered to be the left. TYT, if it represented the left, should be on the mountaintop screaming to the hilt, this is unacceptable, and you would only get the support of this network if you support Medicare for all. It's one policy with 88% support. Are you fucking kidding me? And it's in the middle of a COVID pandemic. And you can't even get lefties to say, we're going to represent America. This is unacceptable. You get our support when you represent our interests. And in this case, our interest is abundantly clear. Medicare for all. And you say that and let it catch fire. One lefty to the next. TYT. Sam Cedar say, you know what? That's right. I'm going to vote for Joe Biden, but I agree with these guys that Medicare for all should be somewhat of a litmus test. So fair enough. And they stop giving people shit about it. All of these lefty groups, the Green New Deal groups, the Sunrise Movement, all of these groups start to stand up and say the exact same thing. Yeah, you're right. That's our demand. You represent our interests, you get our vote. And continuously make the point that it will be unconscionable if you give this election over to Trump because you don't want to represent the public's interests by backing this. And every lefty to the tune of millions say that. Because let me tell you this, it is infinitely true and flat fact right. And for whatever degree of brinksmanship it is, it's the Democratic Party itself that's allowing that brinksmanship. Because ultimately, any party and any notion of a representative government would have already appropriated it. And it is sad that we even have to get to this point of pushing this. Every union should say the exact same thing. All of these people who are out there protesting, everybody in Portland, every Black Lives Matter members, should say that I am talking about, if you're talking about a political revolution, there it is. Unrestrained, unassociated with party, bold, honest, representing the interests for the first time in a very long time of the public itself, and strong, uncompromising. This is what we want. It's in the middle of a pandemic. We shouldn't even be here having to make this argument, and yet here we are, standing up for America. And to the tune of millions, stand there. If you're looking for your political revolution, it's that. There's no party apparatus. You are outside of the political space at that point, and you are fighting for America. And if the Democratic Party is willing to take this election to the man they call the apocalypse and not represent and support a policy with 88% Democratic support, nearly unanimous. There is nothing that has that much support, not even expanding Social Security, unanimous, and 69% public support that only grew during the pandemic. If you are not willing to do that, and you're willing to tank it to a man you're calling the end of democracy, what does it say about the Democratic Party? And whose fault is that? Is it the people who has the overwhelming majority support, or the tiny bit of plutocrats that the Democratic Party is trying to serve that don't want to appropriate that policy? What they don't want to do is give in and surrender to your interests, because that would set a precedent of, one, you no longer being irrelevant, two, you being a vulture in the political space, which will wins beget wins. You don't go back to sleep when you realize that strategy worked. And three, if they give you that win, they know that your political space is different. No, they're not going to want to give you those things. Yes, they will potentially tank it. If the argument turns in any way to why doesn't the Democratic Party appropriate a policy that could get them enough support to beat Trump, then your argument now in your political space at that point puts a spotlight on why don't they do this, because this seems popular and this seems to be the thing that wins. Your world changes. But as the left, you can only get there with courage, forbearance, fortitude, and with these other networks also realizing that, wait a minute, they're right. From a policy standpoint, from a moral standpoint, from an ethical standpoint, and even from a strategic standpoint, they are right. They're standing on the right side of history. And it is abominable and appalling that Democrats don't accept it. TYT, every person on TYT. I can't believe that the Democratic Party doesn't accept this policy. Yeah, we're voting for Biden, but I can't believe they don't accept that policy in order to make sure they win. Your world changes. You do that. That's not a person. That's not a Bernie Sanders. That's not an AOC. That's all of you recognizing that you are something fundamentally different, that they see you as something fundamentally different. And because they see you as something fundamentally different and not like them, they are trying to replace you and get rid of you. I'm saying this is your time. This may be, in fact, your last time for a very long time if what they do succeeds. Like, share, and subscribe. Thanks all.